First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to my mom, who's right over there. Black, white, Asian, Latino, other. Not black enough, not Asian enough. All my life, I've been forced to choose one identity. All my life, I've been told by other people who I am or who I should be. So I was born a military brat to a Black father and a Filipino mother in Southern California. 2 weeks later, literally as a newborn, we moved to Mississippi, then to Colorado, then to Virginia, Montana, Japan, Philippines, Texas, and now I live in Los Angeles. I've always been different. I have been othered in every community I've ever been a part of. I wasn't Black enough in Black communities. I wasn't Asian enough in Asian communities. And in white communities, well, I'm not white. Each community tried to tell me who I was, but more importantly, they told me who I wasn't. Probably like so many of you, I grew up with what felt like a perpetual identity crisis. I had a phase where I didn't want to be called Black. I had a phase where I didn't want to be called Asian. I can't even say that I hated myself because I didn't even know who that was. I had no sense of identity. I was lost. And as the brilliant philosopher Gucci Mane once said, a man who does not have the sauce is lost. And at the time, I absolutely did not have the sauce, and I was absolutely lost. Now, what is the sauce, you're probably asking? Sauce, in my opinion, has a polymorphic definition. So in this context, sauce is the confidence in one's identity. Sauce is knowing who you are and being unapologetic about it. Sauce is not letting anyone tell you who you are. Nobody can tell me who I am. My identity is not up for interpretation. All my life, people have tried to take ownership of an identity and an experience that was never theirs. My identity is a huge part of who I am, but it doesn't define me. I, as a person, transcend all of these social constructs. My identity and physical characteristics might affect the way others interact with me, but at my core, I'm Asia. I'm an artist, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a traveler. I love fashion. I love learning about the science of skincare. I love design. I'm a human. I inspire others and I allow others to inspire me. I am unique, and all of you are too. Mixed people are not a monolith. We may have similar experiences, but our experiences are not exactly alike. Your identity does not define who you are as a person. It simply influences the way you interact with your environment and how others interact with you. Other people's opinions and projections don't change who you are at your core. You are you. I didn't know that I was Black until the 2nd grade. We were living in a very white town in the middle of nowhere in Great Falls, Montana. We were in such a small town that the nearest Best Buy was in Canada. I knew my parents looked different, but as a child, I didn't really know what that meant, nor did I really even care. My parents were my parents, and I was Asia. On the first day in my new school, one of my white classmates referred to me as African American. And I was confused. I didn't really know what that meant. My dad was Black. My mom was Asian. I looked like both of them, but neither of them at the same time. Sure, I'm African American, but my mom's not. She's Asian. So why am I being identified as just African American? I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't fully understand that I was Asian until I moved to Houston, Texas, where my neighborhood was predominantly Black and Latinx. Sure, I'd lived in Japan and the Philippines before moving to Houston, but while I was living in Asia, everyone made it very clear that I was Black. I was bullied for having dark skin, which now as an adult I know now is colorism, and for having curly hair. I was othered for not really being Asian. I got called the N-word one time by a Filipino classmate. To them, I was very visibly Black, and that affected the way that my environment interacted with me. Now, when I moved to Houston, everyone made it very clear that I was, 1, not really Black, 2, too Asian to be Black, and 3, somehow too white at the same time, even though neither of my parents are white. As an adult, I now understand that this was a result of a cultural disconnect. Because I wasn't wearing the right sneakers or listening to the right music, or because I was talking white, this community did not consider me culturally Black. I was informed that my proverbial Black card had been revoked, but honestly, I didn't even feel like I had one in the first place. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned by traveling all over the world is that people often conflate culture with race and ethnicity, especially in areas that have a monolithic race, ethnicity, and culture. In places like Channelview, Texas, Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, South Korea, Great Falls, Montana, places where everyone looks alike, everyone eats the same food, everyone speaks the same language or dialect, or have the same accent. Places where their cultural identity completely aligns with their ethnic or racial identity. As a biracial third culture kid with an immigrant parent that has lived in different places all over the world, I've realized that culture, nationality, ethnicity, and race are all separate concepts. A Black person from Nashville is going to speak differently from a Black person from Compton. A Filipino from Oakland is going to be very culturally different from a Filipino from Cebu. Black Brits are culturally different from African Americans. British Filipinos are culturally different from Filipino Americans. So, what did I learn from this experience? I learned that people are products of their environments. If they don't know or understand something, it's because they never experienced it or had exposure to it themselves. All of those people in my life that told me I'm not this enough or not that enough, they didn't even know what they were saying. I grew up in a multiracial, multicultural, and multilingual household, and every year and a half, I would walk outside my front door and be in a completely different environment with a completely different culture. All of the people trying to tell me who I was simply didn't understand that. And I don't think that's inherently problematic, it's just a different upbringing and experience. They just didn't understand where I was coming from. Now, when I moved to Long Beach, California, LBC, East Side, okay, that's when I truly felt the most comfortable being who I was. It's such a diverse city, you know, we have Filipinos, Cambodians, Vietnamese, Thai, African Americans, African immigrants from various countries, Laotians, Haitians, Samoans, Tongans, Japanese, white Americans, Russians, like from Russia, Spaniards, like from Spain, Mexicans, Colombians, Latinos in general, the list goes on. Because Long Beach is so racially and ethnically diverse, there's a lot of mixed people there. I know Korean Mexicans, Chinese Mexicans, Filipino Mexicans, Black Cambodians, Afro-Mexicans, white Japanese, the list also goes on. So I felt quite a bit less different there. But even then, I still felt different. But it was a different kind of different. This difference that I observed is actually what made me realize that I was more than my identity and how big of a role culture plays in your upbringing. In Long Beach, I met Black Asians, but they grew up in Long Beach and lived there their whole lives. They've never been to Asia. Most of them haven't even left the country. They didn't speak the language or understand certain nuances of their culture. They didn't know about the celebrities from that culture or who the popular musical artists were. They didn't know what it's like to wake up every morning to the sound of a rooster. They didn't know what to say to stop a jeepney driver or how to buy boy bawang at the local sari-sari store. They're American. They were born and raised here. And even though we shared a similar racial and ethnic identity, we were still very different people. We could bond over, all the stupid stuff people say to us and all the microaggressions that we experience and all of that, but at the end of the day, we were different. And that's amazing. It's not a bad thing to be different from other people. Diversity is a gift to every community. These Black Asian Americans have never been to Asia. That's not inherently problematic. That doesn't somehow make them less Asian. I had the incredible privilege of being able to consistently visit and eventually live in Asia and go to school there. It is a privilege to have been able to do that. But that doesn't mean that I can then invalidate someone's identity just because they've never had the privilege of going there. You are culturally a product of your environment. You adapt and grow up in whatever community or communities you're a part of. This is your experience, not someone else's. And no one can tell you that your experience is wrong. Now, occasionally, I'll have my Blackness questioned, like, you never saw Martin? You ain't Black. And most of the time, people are joking, and it's funny, and I laugh at it, but there are also times where people are being completely serious, especially when it comes to how I talk. Suddenly, I turn white because of how I talk. That, to me, is inherently problematic. This is how I talk, and I'm Black. So therefore, I'm talking Black. I'm not somehow less Black solely because of how words sound when they leave my mouth. I still get called the N-word. I still get followed around in stores. I'm very visibly Black, and because of that, I'm treated differently by the people around me. My environment shifts the way it interacts with me because I'm visibly Black. I am Black. I was born Black, and I'm going to die Black. Period. Now, do I have the same experience as a dark-skinned Black American from Atlanta? No. Do I have the same experience as a Nigerian immigrant who lives in the UK? Absolutely not. I am a Black Asian woman who grew up all over the world. I'm culturally different from a Black American from Atlanta. I'm culturally different from a Nigerian immigrant who lives in the UK. Black people are not a monolith. We all have different cultures and experiences, yet we're all still Black. It's not a bad thing to not be able to immediately relate to a Black person from another community or culture. I think it's amazing that Black communities can be so different because, like I said before, diversity is a gift, always. When I say I love being Filipino, I'm not saying that I hate being Black. When I say that I love being Black, I'm not saying that I hate being Filipino. I'm Black. I'm also Asian. I'm Black and Asian. By declaring all or part of my racial background at any given time, I'm simply embracing who I am unapologetically. No one is going to tell me who I am or who I'm not, because this is not their experience. This is not their identity. And if we're being honest, it's not even any of their business. I got so fed up with people trying to tell me who I was. And I truly believe that is the reason why I'm so outspoken as an adult. I was always so afraid of standing up for myself as a child, and it was always in fear of being ostracized even further than I already was. Now, as an adult, I found the sauce. I am unapologetic in who I am. I have confidence in my identity. I'll stand up for myself. I'll even stand up for you. I'll stand up for anyone who doesn't deserve to be treated poorly. I finally found my voice, and I wanted to use it to help others who felt like they didn't have one. In October 2016, I created a hashtag called #MagandangMorenex. For all the non-Filipinos out there, it literally translates to beautiful brown skin in Tagalog. I remember sitting in my room trying to brainstorm how I was going to celebrate October, which is Filipino American History Month, and my mind went back to how I was treated for my skin color when I lived in the Philippines. My darker skinned classmates were also treated very poorly. And even in the US, my Filipino friends' mothers would tell them to stay inside or else it'll get too dark, and give them papaya soap so they can whiten their skin. Colorism is so ingrained in the culture that its weight was carried throughout the diaspora. I remembered how I felt being bullied for my skin color, and I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. I never saw conversations about colorism happening in mainstream Filipino media, so I created my own conversation. The first day we did hashtag Magandang Morenex in October 2016, there were like 30 tweets. And that was a win to me. I was so happy that my story resonated with 30 other people and got 30 people talking about colorism online. The next time we did Magandang Morenex was in May 2017, which was Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. This time, there were over 20,000 tweets. As of October 2019, there have been over 90,000 unique posts all across social platforms with more than 7 million impressions. It went from being a simple hashtag born out of my bedroom in Long Beach, California, to an international global movement overnight. I started seeing more conversations about colorism in mainstream Filipino media. I started getting interview inquiries and press features, and I started getting invited to speak to my peers at universities. Hashtag Magandang Morenex was covered in international publications such as Teen Vogue, Vice, ABS-CBN, which is the biggest media conglomerate in the Philippines, and even in Glamour magazine in Poland. This simple hashtag brought the topic of colorism in Asia to a global conversation. And all of this happened because I decided to speak authentically about my own experience. Because I decided to stand up for myself and for others. I didn't do it for the clout or the accolades. I did it because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Colorism must be dismantled. I don't care if people get upset that I'm calling colorism out, because there was quite a bit of backlash in response to this hashtag, believe it or not. There were some Filipinos that were trying to deny that colorism exists, which is ridiculous considering how many skin whitening ads are just up at any given time in every city. They were trying to invalidate my experience because I'm half Black and not really Filipino. And there were also some Black Americans that were trying to invalidate my experience because I'm light-skinned. Now, this is an important conversation that I'm always willing to have with the Black community. I'm considered light-skinned in Black communities, and I actually benefit from being light-skinned in Black communities. I passed the brown paper bag test. However, I don't have that same experience in Asia. In Asia and in Asian communities, I'm considered dark-skinned. I struggled with colorism and faced prejudice in an entirely different country. They didn't understand that colorism and what is considered dark skin is relative and different in every community. And because I have found so much power in my voice, I was able to push back a little. I was able to say, hey, this isn't really your experience. Please listen and be more understanding of a different experience. Opposing the status quo is never just a walk in the park. When you push back against something that has been normalized for centuries, sometimes what you have to say is going to be very unpopular. When you're trying to help dismantle a normalized system of oppression, you have to remember why you're even trying to do that in the first place. You have to be confident in what you're fighting for and own your power. To me, dismantling the idea that someone can be treated lesser than solely because of their skin color is a good fight to fight. For some reason, people have an issue with that. But that's not going to stop me from doing what's right. Since creating this movement, I have not once let someone take away my power, and that feels so good. It feels good to know who I am and fully embrace that unapologetically. I found power in my voice, and I'm using that power to stand up for myself and for others all around the world. You can create good change in the world simply by using your voice. You can protect your power simply by using your voice. So before I conclude today's royal address, I want to encourage all of you to embrace who you are. Do not let anyone tell you who you cannot be. You go and be great with your lavender. Before you walk out your front door and into the world, make sure you know who you are and fight for it. Do not let people bully you into submission. You have power in your confidence, and they're trying to take your power away. Don't let them do that. Use your voice. Stand up for yourself and for others. Embrace the sauce. Our identities are not up for interpretation. No one can tell us who we are. Thank you.
And then maybe take some questions from the audience. First, I want to thank you for sharing that with us. I really found a lot of meaning in that. And I can relate to it in my own way. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can also relate to it in your own way. One second. Okay. So you mentioned that you spent significant time abroad growing up. How do you think that changes how you view your position in society as a mixed person compared to folks who come from mostly American perspective?
I think my upbringing, growing up in different places all over the world, has changed everything about my life and changed everything about the way I view my identity and the way that I interact with the world. I don't think I would have recognized how I interact with colorism in the way that I do in different communities if it wasn't for me living in different places. Because like I said before, in Black communities, I'm actually considered light-skinned and actually benefit from colorism in that way. Whereas in Asian communities, I am considered dark-skinned. And I don't think that I would have had that full understanding had I not lived in two different places. So I think living all over the place and experiencing different cultures and the way that people are living and different concepts and different cultures, everything about it, it just gave me a fuller understanding of the way the world works.
That makes sense. When did you begin to find confidence in your mixed identity? Were there any role models or influences that helped you find comfort in your own identity?
When I was living in the Philippines, this was around 2004, 2005, so the Black Eyed Peas were really popular at this time. And Apple the App, who is black and half Filipino, he was my idol when I was living in the Philippines, because I was like, whoa, this person looks like me and is famous. That's crazy. That's why I think I'm so passionate about visibility and representation, because just him being himself and doing what he loves doing gave me, wow, am I gonna cry? This is dumb. It gave me motivation and made me feel better about myself when everyone was telling me that I should. This is so stupid.
Yes.
And then I also want to think back, when I was living in Houston, Baby Fat was really huge, and Kimora Lee Simmons was Black and Japanese. She was Black and Asian, and I was like, oh my god, another person who looks like me that is famous and doing cool things. So I don't know. I think it's really important to to have representation and have people who look like you. That's why I love what I do, because I'm able to embrace who I am and hopefully inspire other people who look like me to also embrace who they are. Sorry, wow. Don't apologize.
Everybody has butterflies. When we picked you up, we were like, oh my god, is it? You're becoming your idol, and then you're definitely an idol for other people. So we really appreciate everything. I'm pretty sure. So of course. So now we're gonna open up the questions to the audience. Let's do 3 or 4, or anyone that has any questions for AJ Jackson. Raise your hand. All right.
Not really a question, but I just wanted to thank you.
I'm probably gonna cry too because same. But yeah, like I also am like Black and Filipino, and like you are that person for me. Like seeing you and like seeing how you like tissues. Sorry, I don't want to make you cry, but like you're making me cry. It's I just have always like really struggled with, you know, also embracing like being either Black or being Filipino, and like most of my life, you know, I present as Black, so people kind of just consider you like, oh, you're mixed, but like who cares about the other side? Like we just know you're Black and mixed, you know. And it wasn't until I went to go visit the Philippines and like I got to be there and like be with other Filipinos that I could really like feel that I could embrace that side of me too. So, and then that's when I found out about you. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Like hearing that there's someone else who also feels like the same way and also understands that like I'm fully Black and I'm fully Asian, you know, like, and like the fact that you said like, me saying that I'm Black isn't denying my Filipino-ness, and me saying I'm Filipino isn't denying my Blackness. Like, just thank you, because you voiced a lot of things that I just, I'm trying not to cry, but like,